let's get to what this means for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because so now I tweeted this out yesterday as soon as this happened. Just the roster you're now looking at with the 2024 Jags in the last year of Trevor Lawrence's rookie deal. So what you've done is you've signed Gabe Davis, you've lost Calvin Ridley. So now you still need another receiver as part of this. Yep. You really don't have any options in free agency because the two guys that are now available on the top of the list are Mike Williams and Hollywood Brown. I said this yesterday. The Jags already have a Mike Williams and a Hollywood Brown at home. The way that you're going to use Gabe Davis is how you'd want to use Mike Williams. The way that you're going to use Christian Kirk is how you'd want to use Hollywood Brown. So there's a redundancy there where even those options aren't attractive if you could get them at the right price. So now you're sitting in a situation where if you don't get a receiver in the first 2 rounds, the idea of maximizing the offense, which is how you've pivoted every single one of your resources this offseason, goes out the window. Like in the long run, this might be fine. They were never going to give Calvin Ridley $23 million a year, and picking a receiver in the first round and getting on that timeline.
That's where I was going to take this conversation, but yes.
In 2026, that's probably fine. But for this year, when again, your last year when he's cheap, it is just such a letdown when you consider what it could have been with Ridley and now what they're probably going to be looking at. And now it's the same thing we talked about. The fragility of having to come away with the guy in the first round is not the position that you want to be in. And suddenly that's where they are.
If they want to be where I think they wanted to be in 2024, they need to not only nail a receiver draft pick in the top 2 rounds, but that guy has not just like nail where we're like, oh, he has 800 yards. Wow. Nice season. Wow. This guy can really be something a day. Like nail it. Like 1,100 yards. This guy might be a Pro Bowler if it goes right. Like that's like, as far as like what they want to be, like that's what they have to replace. They're replacing. They have to, if you look at it just through this lens in 1 year, they have to replace the Calvin Ridley role, which is an X receiver who eats 10 to 12 targets in a game. That's a lot to ask of any rookie. And this is a loaded rookie class. It's just really hard. But having said that, that's just 2024. Why that's frustrating, it's a missed window because what you're saying, the Trevor Lawrence contract. Pay him all the stuff down the road that we're going to have to talk about probably a whole bunch of times, but they might stumble in to a good answer down the road. That guy might turn to 800 yards to 1,100 yards to 1,200 yards and turn into a true number 1 guy. Like they might stumble into the right answer. The thing is, it's Trent Baalke making the pick. He doesn't like believe in drafting receivers high. Like this is just his philosophy. He buys made products. That is his team building philosophy. When you look at his receiver picks over the years,
and receiver specifically, that's the exact opposite way that you're supposed to go right now when you consider the surplus amount of guys who are coming into the draft.
That's exactly it. It's just a very, very, and it's all just, and John Shipley pointed out too, is because they waited until
the Jags.
He covers the Jags. He does a great job. And Ship just had a great point where he said, this is all preventable if you just look at the Josh Allen part of this. Just if they didn't wait until not only the 11th hour and 50th minute to go, hey, let's talk to Josh Allen and his people. No, oh shoot, it didn't come together in 12 hours. Wow, we got to tag him. If they just managed that and actually rewarded this guy that had underlying pressure numbers that showed he was building onto a breakout season like he had this year.
24-year-old effective edge rusher.
He had all of his underlying pressure numbers show that he was not only just like a very good pass rusher, he was on the cusp of having a 15 sack season. Weird. He had a 17 sack season or whatever he had this year. But all that stuff, the QB hits, all that stuff. He was a good player already before this year. But again, this is the Quincy Williams stuff. Their self-scouting sucks. Like they just don't like can't you should reward that. Get on it early. I already just knocked the other day the Eagles and going, well, do you want to pay Landon Dickerson early? Hey, at least they paid him early and got ahead of the market and got ahead of all this. Because now you pay him, then you freeze up the franchise tag, which you then can use on Calvin Ridley, and then you can just figure out what it is, and you're not forced into this mess that they're in this situation right now. But it's just a mess. It's just such a mess with them always. And we're going to do disappointing teams. Yeah, the Jaguars were one of them for like how they went about this first week of free agency.
Looking at the numbers from 2022, Josh Allen had 67 pressures. That was 10th among all edge rushers, tied with Brian Burns, who just got the second biggest edge rushing contract in the entire NFL after Nick Bosa. But instead of giving him any sort of extension, the Jags refused to do that, don't have the tag, and now lose Calvin Ridley. You give up a third and a fifth to do that for however many games of Calvin Ridley. And so many people in the last 24 hours I've been like complaining about this, have said, well, they were good in 2022. They've been a playoff team. Want more for yourselves.
That's
Like
it.
we were intrigued by them in 2022 because it was an odd offense that they were getting the most out of.
Yep.
The whole entire point of
Because I
this
want to misfit
was
toys.
is
Yeah.
to build on that. That
Yeah.
was the promise of the Calvin Ridley thing. It was to take this oddity, this like curiosity of a skill position group that they had gotten the most out of as Trevor was ascending and be like, all right, we're going to stamp our flag. We are going to be a competitive team. We're going to be a contender now with whatever you think of him, above average, firmly above average quarterback play for peanuts. This is your chance. And in a lot of ways, they have squandered that chance. I think Trevor is good enough that they're going to be relevant with him for a long time. And again, if they get a receiver and a cost-controlled contract, it's probably going to be okay in the long run.
Right.
But to have a rookie quarterback deal with a guy playing at the level he's capable of, and for this to be the roster that you're ultimately going to trot into that season, it's a disappointment. There's no other way around it, even if they've had some nice moments over the last couple of years.
And just the resources they had, all the cap space. I know cap space is usually just, it's kind of a, mirage about what that means for your roster and what you have to do with it. But they're just how they've wielded
It's
that.
not. But as other teams have had these rookie quarterback contracts, they've wielded them in positive ways.
In great ways. And that's what I mean. And just in the moments, in those original signings 2 years ago, we were frustrated. And then it just the use of draft picks and the use of how they've used that draft capital that they've had. It's just like, just one after another of missing point, missing point. And even just back to the Josh Allen thing. I was writing about Will Anderson for when like the awards stuff at the end of the year, defensive rookie of the year. And I was looking back, okay, data all went back to 2019. I was looking at I think it was like top pressure rates for rookie pass rushers. And it was like Micah Parsons, was on top of everything. Okay. There's some Nick Bosa. There was Will Anderson, like top 3, top 4 and everything was Josh Allen. Just under their nose has been this guy, and they have yet to reward him. He got into a tag situation. Sorry, it's just like one after another. Like they have only so many stars on this team, and they act like they still have to prove it. It's like, so what does this mean? Are you just going to reward guys that are outside your building? Like, what does that mean for draft picks? I don't know. Just top down just stinks, and just from the outside, it just stinks, and I hate it all.
It's been really frustrating, and I think it will continue to be really frustrating unless they completely nail this draft in a way that they haven't, in the way they have not with the last couple drafts. According to Ian Rappaport, it sounds like Eric Armstead is closing in on a deal with the Jags where he will land with Trent Baalke, who drafted him in the first round in 2015. Right. So nice little reunion there 9 years later. I like this a lot. For as much as we've been shitting on the Jags over the last 2 weeks, the 2 spots that I've wanted more, it's more than 2 spots. The spot on defense I've wanted more from the Jaguars over the last couple of years is a third pass rushing option. It has never emerged. So now in defined passing situations with Ryan Nielsen now as your defensive coordinator, if you can trot out Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, and Eric Armstead as your 3 technique, you can get after some people.
No, that's great.
If you think stylistically, think back to what the Saints have been along their defensive line over the last few years, and then look at the way that Atlanta was built with Calais Campbell in the interior and then playing outside a little bit last year. They love these monster defensive ends. That's what Nielsen has preferred his entire time as a defensive line coach and defensive coordinator. Armstead fits exactly into that, and I think that he works very well with the pieces they already have.
Yeah, I know this is so funny. It's like, actually, I like this. After just doing everything I did.
Guys are capable of making decent moves. I just don't like the overall vision.
Yeah, no, but I do. Just everything you just laid out. His inside kind of versatility with what I think Walker's like great best path will be on rushing downs is as an inside pass rusher. I actually love that with Armstead and Allen, and all the games that they could potentially run, like, T's and ETs. I like that. And again, Darnell Savage is a little bit of an overpay, but I did like that as a buy lowish candidate because of what I think he could do. But also,
that is not a buy low. That is buy at a reasonable price.
It was buying at a reasonable price, but I actually want to see him in this defense
today, though.
Because, pardon?
Did you see what Darnell Savage said today?
No.
So he was talking about his role in Green Bay. And he said, I've been playing a lot of safety over the last couple of years, but I think I can play all over the place. So there is a chance that just to get your hopes up even further, that we see more Darnell Savage in the slot with Jacksonville. And you're going to buy into that so hard. I'm already looking forward to it.
Well, I already love Nielsen. Like a big fan, loved what he did last year. So it's like that's good to hear because I think that's his best role. Savage in the slot is kind of like a really athletic guy there. So maybe, just maybe. God, they're getting me back in. And then they decided Devin Duvernay because Jamal Agnew wasn't enough.
I love that they needed someone in the Jamal Agnew role. That was the reason they needed to go after Devin Duvernay.
That was a priority, not Josh Allen. not Calvin Ridley. Got to fill up that role of Jamal Agnew.
We'll see what happens with their secondary. We haven't talked about the Ronald Darby signing at all. I mean, he was a rotational piece for the Ravens.
Yeah.
I understand it as just like a low cost dice roll. He's had some decent moments in the
body.
NFL. So can you just piece together the secondary with usable guys as you've had to donate more resources to the offense, and potentially will have to use your first round pick on offense, and you won't be able to kind of restock the cupboard on the back end. But I understand how they've gone about it, even if the Darnell Savage thing seems like a sticker price pay.
Yeah, and Nielsen covers up those guys pretty well. It's like, again, he does a good job on the back end. It's while at defensive line guys kind of just don't have that tie-in, like when they become D coordinators. He showed a pretty cool understanding of it all.
Well, for something to point out there is that Jerry Gray was there last year with him in Atlanta. And so Jerry Gray had been the defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator for the Packers for years. He was the DBs coach in Minnesota forever. So he came to be the passing game coordinator and I think like the assistant head coach for the Falcons last year. So I think that helps potentially have a guy with tons of experience taking care of the back end. I don't know what the Jags defensive coaching staff looks like.
Okay.
So just something to keep in mind.
No, it is. No, I'm definitely keeping an eye on the Jags this year, but the defense is almost more interesting to me than the offense. Also, the Jags on the offensive side, a guy that had
Chris Richard is there.
Oh, okay.
Chris Richard is there. That makes
definitely
sense.
Has some knowledge on the back end.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
But Nick Holes went from the Jags to he's the OC now with the Titans, so he knew Calvin Ridley as well. I was actually just that familiarity as well. So there's some little connection as well there. Some sexual AFC Southish.